Okay, so I will wait. Okay, and right now I can just do like this. And I hope that right now you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can.
Now we can.
Okay. And here, okay. So I am really happy that I can start our Poland-Panama Academic Forum. And today I will talk a little bit about Poland in our region. And I know that actually during one presentation, I am not able to show everything or discuss about everything. It's just an introduction. And I hope that maybe it will be some kind of inspiration for us to think about some other topics which we want to discuss during our next meetings. So first of all, maybe I will just, okay, yeah. First of all, I want to show you my plan of presentation, and I will talk a little bit about the geography and why it was so important and maybe still is so important in our foreign policy, in general, in our history. And then I will talk a little bit what does it mean our region in Europe, because, well, we have so many options to divide Europe into some kind of parts, and it's not so obvious to which region we really belong or in which region we should do our foreign policy. Then I will talk a little bit about Poland as a country of transit. And for me, it's a little bit funny because I still remember that when we were in Panama, we always heard that Panama como un país del tránsito. And because of it, I think that this is a really great issue about which we can talk a little bit. Then about Poland and European Union and North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which right now I think is perceived as one of the most important organization because it's guarantee of our safety, of our security in those times, especially during the war in Ukraine. And then I will talk a little bit about roles which Poland wants to play in our region, or maybe who our politicians want us to be, but it's another topic. So I will start with the geography. And first of all, I want to show you where the Poland is. I am sorry that this picture is so blurred. I don't know what happened, but I hope that you can see Europe and countries and borders and so on. And here you can see the Poland. This red country is Poland, and those, let's say, yellowish countries are members of European Union. And well, as you can see, we are located in the heart of Europe, and our neighbors are. So the first, Germany. Here, I think that you can see. Maybe I need some kind of pointer to show it, but I'm not
No, but
sure.
I think we can see. I mean, we can see your mouse. That's, I think.
Ah, okay. Okay. Great. So here you can see Germany, here the Czech Republic, here Slovakia, here Ukraine, Belarus, and Lithuania. And this really small piece of land, which is gray, is Russia. And I think that for so many people, it's is like a surprise that the Poland has a border with Russia. Yes, we have. It's actually small, but Russia is divided into two, let's say, pieces. This Russia, which we actually know, I mean this big part, and another, the smaller, which is called in Polish Kaliningrad. And yes, we have border with Russia. And right now, I want to, okay, it works. I want to show you a physical map of Poland, and I am not going to talk much more about let's say geography, because it's not a topic for now. I only want to show you that we have mountains in the south, and we have access to the sea. And as you can see here, I mean, this is Baltic Sea, and it is connected with the Atlantic Sea, which is located here. And sometimes people say that, well, Baltic Sea is more like a big lake, because this connection between Atlantic City and Atlantic Ocean and the Baltic Sea is really, really narrow. I have forgotten the name in English for it, but well, it's more like a really big lake, but it's still important to our commerce and general for our economy. And here you can see our capital, Warsaw, and other significant cities like Gdańsk, Sopot, and Gdynia, Wrocław, Kraków, and region of Silesia. Actually, it's my motherland, so yeah, it's kind of important to me. And here you can see the border. Here is Germany, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Ukraine, Belarus, Lithuania, and here is this part of Russia, which is Kaliningrad. Okay, and here you can see the political map of Europe and why it's so important. Because as I said at the beginning, I mean that it's not so easy to recognize regions in Europe. I mean that, of course, you probably know that we have something like West Europe or East Europe and so on. But actually, there are no, let's say, nature or geographical borders which show us which is Central Europe or West Europe. It's more like identity. It's more like some kind of behaviors or traditions which say that some country belongs to region or not. And another thing is where the Europe ends. I mean that from the geographical point of view, we don't have such a significant natural border which will separate Asia from Europe. I mean that there is like one really big continent, which is Eurasia. So it's Asia and Europe. And well, let's say that we have some kind of natural borders which separate Europe from Asia, but it's more about identity and about history and things like this. And let's say the most popular opinion is that the Europe ends here at the Ural Mountains, which are located in Russia, and here at the Caucasus, and here when the near to the Black Sea, Black Sea, right here. And well, it means that, for example, really, let's say, significant part of Russia, because not big, but with the biggest cities like Petersburg or Moscow, are part of Europe. And actually, to us, it's really important because, well, it influenced to our identity and especially to our foreign policy and history. And here you can see, for example, the map of European Union. And as you can see, it's not the best option to show what is Europe. I mean, for example, you can see that Switzerland is not a European Union country, but of course it's in Europe, or maybe UK after Brexit. With no doubts, those countries are in Europe, but when you take a look at the European Union maps, you can see that, well, it's not so easy. Sorry, but it's one option. So right now is the main question: which regions we already have in Europe? So first of all, West Europe, and I think it's clear. For example, that Germany are part of West Europe, but sorry, that France is part of West Europe. But what, for example, with Germany? I mean, from the historical point of view, they are more like Central Europe, not as a West Europe, but because of the fact that after Second World War, Germany was, let's say, divided into two parts. One was under Soviet Union influence, and another was ruled by UK, USA, and France. And the second part took part in process of integration after Second World War, after integration of Europe. And actually, I think that they want to be perceived as a country of West Europe because they took part in it. Sorry. But actually, this other part of Germany doesn't, because was under the Soviet Union influence. And then we have a category of Central Europe and Central East Europe. And for instance, Poland is really common shown as a Central East Europe country because we are, let's say, that in the central from the geographical point of view, but also we are a little bit at the east. And because of it, we belong to the Central East Europe, because East Europe are countries like Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. And I think that this is not well seen when somebody says that Poland is a part of East Europe, because we perceive that the country such as Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia, and so on, they are not as democratical as, for example, we or the Czech Republic, and so on. So East Europe is more like category which is connected to the history and to the condition of internal policy. So it's more complicated. And actually, they were part of the Soviet Union as a country. I mean, Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. And for instance, Poland, the Czech Republic were during the Cold War. They are more like countries which were under Soviet influence, but we weren't as a part of Soviet Union. So it's slightly different. And actually, I think it's really important to our identity. Here you can see other options how we can divide Europe. For instance, here you can see that countries which are, let's say, red, they were under Soviet and, let's say, communism and socialism influence during Cold War. So they decided to say that they are more like East Europe, but for instance, here Germany and France are West Europe without now doubts. So yeah, it's really complicated. And here you can see other options how we can do it. For example, this map shows that one part of Poland is in West Europe and another is in East Europe. So it's a little bit complicated. And now I want to switch into topic which I called as transit. And it's really important because well, we are located in the heart of Europe, but additionally, we are a country which, well, let's say that we have a border with countries who aren't a part of European Union and Schengen zone. So we are something like a border. And because of it, especially before the war in Ukraine, we were, well, actually we are still a country of transit because the goods and other things were transported from the European Union to the east and from the east to the west, and additionally from the north to the south and from south to the north. So actually it's really important. I think that everybody can agree that it's a common view to see on our Polish roads a real line of trolleys with which are transporting some stuffs, and they are registered in other countries, and they belong to the some kind of transport firms. And here you can see the map of roads in Poland, I mean the main roads in Poland, and we have 3 highways, one from the north to the south and 2 from the west to the east, and they are here. And we have 15 international airports, so it's really important to our economy. And here you can see railways. I mean, it was such a surprise to us when we realized that, for example, in Panama there is only one railway. In Poland we have really, let's say, it's really easy to get from one city to another by train. I mean, it's a really common option to travel here in Poland. And I know that maybe showing you the map is not the best option. I want to show you the numbers. And first of all, we have 420,000 kilometers of roads and 5,000 kilometers of expressway and 2,000 kilometers of highways. Expressway is something in between the normal road and the highway. Actually, I haven't found the best translation, so I decided to translate it just like this. And we have 2 international expressway in Poland. One is still under construction, I mean the Via Carpatia, but it's still really important, especially when we are talking about transport and Poland as a country of transit. And as I mentioned, we have 15 international airports, but we have more than 20,000 kilometers of railways. And as I said, it's really important. So yeah, we are kind of country of transit. Here you can see the Via Baltica from the north to the south, and it's longer, but this green is a part in Poland. And you can see here Via Carpatia, but it's still under construction. It will be from the north to the south part of Europe, so it's really important. And now a few words about European Union. So since 2004, we are a member of European Union. So it means that in May of this year, we celebrated anniversary of being EU member country. And actually, we are the biggest right now beneficiary of the European funds. So it means that we pay to the European Union less than we receive for projects. And it's really important because it helped to, let's say, speed up our economy. And actually you can see the difference in Poland when you compare, for example, Poland from, let's say, 2001 or something like this to what is now. I mean, I am 22 years old, so I don't remember the Poland before the EU, but I am more than sure that the professors who are with us, or for example, our parents, can agree that the Poland really changed, and you helped us in this. And I think that the most important thing for now to mention is that we have access to the common market and to the free movement of people, goods, services, and capital. So it means that, for example, after this presentation, I can just go, for example, to Spain and start a company there. And it's so easy. I do not have any permissions and things like this. Only, well, the rules for me and, for example, for people who live in Spain are the same. And it's really great. And because of being a part of EU, we are also a member of Schengen zone, which means that we can travel in Schengen zone without passport and without border controls. And it's really comfortable because, for example, when you are traveling from, let's say, Warsaw to Berlin, to Berlin, the capital of Germany, you can you even sometimes don't see that you are crossing the border, because while you are just driving and suddenly you can see the road signs are different, and it's everything because there is no border control. And I think that I do not have enough time to show you the map of grants of EU, which were sponsored by EU in Poland. But here you can see some kind of, let's say, board which says that this project was financed by EU. And I think that this is a really common view in Poland. And now about NATO, so North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And I will just say that NATO is some kind of organization which, based on collective defense, and especially during Cold War, it was against Soviet Union. After Cold War, let's say the NATO had something like existential crisis, because, well, the enemy just, well, didn't exist, and it was a problem to NATO. But right now, especially during war which is in Ukraine, then NATO is even more important. And as I said at the beginning, it's like something like a guarantee to us that we, let's say, should be safe, because attack on one member means that you attacked every members of NATO, and it's really significant. Here you can see the map of NATO members, and, well, besides of the Europe, also the NATO members are United States and Canada. So, well, we at least hope that, for example, Russia, well, won't attack, for example, Poland, because they are afraid of USA. And because of it, we treat NATO as a guarantee of our safe right now. And here you can see that Poland is really important in general in NATO strategy, because we are a border country. And well, because of it, we have military infrastructure, bases, etc. here in Poland, which were sponsored by NATO, and and were constructed by NATO members. And after Russians attacked on Ukraine, we have more than 12,000 soldiers from all NATO countries. who are permanently here in Poland, and it's also really, really important. And for the end, I want to a little bit speak who actually we want to be in our region, or maybe who want to be according to our politicians. Here you can see Andrzej Duda, he is our president. And well, I know that this is a longer discussion who we want to be or who our politicians want us to be. But I will only say that, as I mentioned at the beginning, somehow we are a country of transit, but additionally we are a country which is a border between, let's say, West Europe and the other countries, and the NATO and other countries, and EU and other countries. So actually our role is really, really important. And well, especially now during the war in Ukraine, our role is even more significant because maybe, as you know, let's say the majority of refugees from the Ukraine fled to Poland. And it was a really common view in 2022 to see so many refugees from Ukraine here in Poland at bus stations, railway stations, and so on. And actually, Andrzej Duda always mentioned that while we help Ukraine so much, especially at the first year of the invasion, and yeah, it's true. I mean, right now our political scene is a little bit complicated because from the October we have a new government, and the new government actually they are not friends with our president, and it's even more complicated. And I think that we will discuss about it maybe later a little bit. And well, our previous government want us to be perceived as a, let's say, hegemon in our region, and as a country which has a really strong traditional Catholic values. And I think that when Claudia, for example, during other meetings will prepare a presentation about religions, we will talk about it much more because it's really, really interesting topic. So for me, it's everything for now. I don't want to prolong it too much. I know that it was only something like overview, and we'll talk about all those topics later, and I think deeper, of course. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much. I will not enter this discussion because I would like to leave this for you, students, for people just to exchange, to comment, to have some ideas. And we, of course, we would like to know your view on Poland and how you see our country, maybe what you want to know more about country. Maybe you can suggest more topics to discuss.
Or we can go to the presentation about Panama and then make a huge discussion. I mean, we have two options.
Then talk about some other ideas, okay, and comments.
Well, if you want me to present first, I would really appreciate that because I think the two presentations will connect quite well, one with another, actually. And then we can have the discussion so we can compare a bit. We can talk about the roles of Panama and Poland with the different ideas, which, by the way, as I said, are pretty there. They're one to another. So I will start my presentation. Okay, please tell me if you can see.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, it's great to see you here. Good morning and afternoon and evening for everyone who is on this meeting. My name is Andrea Reyes Bonilla, and I am the president of the Students Association of International Affairs in Panama. Now, being that in this occasion, we're talking about our countries in the regional context, I'm going to also talk a bit about Panama and what Panama is for the world and the regions in which we are. Now, where Panama is in the world, if we think about it, it's set it sets in America, the continent of America, and the position of Panama is something sometimes we have to think about quite a lot when we are mentioning Panama. Also, if there is a problem with my connection, please do tell me, because there has been a problem with the connection today. So if you cannot hear something, please tell me and I'll go back to that. Now, Panama is this little country in the middle of the American continent. And if we divide America as in Latin America, we are taught this would be North America from Canada to Mexico. Central America is here from Belize and Guatemala to Panama. And South America is Colombia until Argentina. And there is a special place in the Americas, which is called the Caribbean. Now, what is Panama in this context? Well, if you divide the American continent in two, we would be usually in the south part of it, because North America is usually just these three countries, and then the rest of the continent is south of the continent. If we divide it into historical part of it, then we would be most definitely part of the south, detaching ourselves from the rest of Central America, as we call it. If we think about after Panama detaches historically from the project of Colombia, we would be Central American. However, our culture is very much Caribbean. So although geographically there is a way to locate Panama, Central America, there are plenty of ways, several ways, to divide the continent and then give Panama a place. It's so important to think of it that way, and it becomes so ridiculous at some point that if we go to Olympic Games, the American continent is usually portrayed the following way: North America, Central America, South America, the Caribbean, and Panama. So in those points, Panama is not even part of the subdivisions and regions in which the American continent is divided usually. However, we will use for this presentation the fact that Panama is geographically located in the central part of the Americas, and also that it is definitely a Latin American country. Now, as previously mentioned by the previous exposition, Panama doesn't really have that many of railways. We are mostly a capital country in which we have a metro line. And they're almost all located in this specific part of the country. It's not really that long. However, there is something we call Carretera Panamericana, which is the Pan American path that comes all the way from north to the south of the continent. There is a stop precisely here, because Panama, if we see the map, is between Costa Rica and Colombia. And there is what we call El Tapón del Darién in Spanish, which is a part of the country of Panama that does not offer a railroad for people to go through. However, there is a problem with migration within the country, and that problem definitely makes us think, is there really a stop for the Pan American Railroad? There is. There is. However, because people are migrating through Darien to Panama, definitely there are still people passing through, although we are doing our best not to have that many people going through our country, because this is a national park and it's important to preserve it. Now that we know where Panama is in the world, we'll see the regions of interest. We're going to see Latin America, as I mentioned, and Central America. Now, what do we see as Latin America? We see that there are a few countries that are not highlighted in this map. That's because we consider Latin America mostly the countries that speak Spanish and Portuguese, sometimes French, but mostly Spanish and Portuguese, as part of the Latin American region. But what is Panama for this specific place? Now, mostly the most important part is that we are a logistic hub of the Americas. And I want to thank the ambassador to Panama of Poland, because she mentioned very important parts of how Panama is to Latin America, how Panama is to the world, and how Panama is for Central America. And yes, definitely, we are a logistic hub. We have el Centro Logístico Regional de Asistencia Humanitaria, which would be the most important logistic hub for humanitarian help within the region. We have plenty of humanitarian causes in that place, and they're there to support the region of Latin America, and whenever there is needed something, it's there. But Panama is not only that logistic hub, we also are a diplomatic hub. The international organizations are in Ciudad del Saber, City of Knowledge, and it's very important to know that whenever we need to talk to these organizations, they're found there. There's even one of the offices, the office that it's going to eventually become the site of a European Union. In Panama, we don't know exactly where it's going to be, but there is an office, and it is located also in Ciudad del Saber. But we also have their UN sites, and we have plenty of other international organizations and non-governmental organizations there in Ciudad del Saber. Now, international cooperation in Latin America, we definitely think of the Organization of the American States. And what happens in this region particularly is that international cooperation happens in the environmental side of it, but also educational side of it. And within Latin America, there is a constant talk of being able to help one country and another, or showing a way of preserving nature over and over again. However, what matters to us the most for this presentation, I believe, this is my very personal opinion, is Central America. Notice how Mexico is just painted slightly, but it's really not part of Central America. We consider Mexico the only Latin speaker country that's not part of the rest of the division of America in the Latin American parts. Mexico is the only one that's in the north parts of the 4 important divisions, North, Central, South Caribbean. However, definitely Mexico is a country that's in constant interest of Central America. Now, there are 2 specific international organizations or international regional organizations that we need to focus on for Panama within the Central American region. That would be Parlacen, the Central American Parliament, in Spanish, Parlamento Centroamericano, and the Central American Integration System, SICA, Sistema de Integración Centroamericano. Now, why are these 2 important? First of all, Parlacen, we must think of it as politics. We must think of it as democracy. We must think of it as a way to develop these thoughts of politics and democracy within the Central American region. And we must think of the Central American Integration System, SICA, as a way to do international cooperation. Now, SICA as an organization also takes part of international cooperation, and technical cooperation is seen quite a lot there. I'm pretty sure if we wish to talk a bit more about it, we will have more experiences on it after this presentation. But what matters here is to understand that these 2 mechanisms help us be something important within the region. Now, in Parlacen, Panama is considered a special country, and this has to do with the fact that Panama's birth as a nation needed help somehow of bigger countries such as the United States of America, which I'm pretty sure the students of Poland who came to Panama experienced when they came here, and they studied it I'm pretty sure beforehand and then while they were here. While we talked about those topics, we also understand that even though Panama definitely needed that help, used that help, and struggled because of it, Now it is kind of the leader of, non-official leader of Central America. Plenty of reasons include, but are not reserved, for the Panamanian use of the dollar as the main currency. The Panamanian balboa and the US dollar are worth the same in paper. Of course, if we go to the United States, we are not going to have our coins received there. However, it is used widely within the country. And in system of integration, it is very important to know that SICA receives cooperation in terms of monetary help, and the international cooperation that happens within the region exceeds the $73 million like type of amount of money. And it is important to know that there is a lot of money moving through the Parlacen, through the integration system, and that at least Panama does its best to work with the projects, which are mostly about environmental help or environmental projects. But to pinpoint the exact point of what Panama is, we're gonna say a special phrase that in Panama is used quite a lot in Spanish, which is Panamá, puente del mundo, corazón del universo, which is bridge of the world, heart of the universe. And it has to do with the fact that we are located in the middle of the globe. Now, the Panama significance in world trade and the implications of the birth of an Isthmian state in the Americas is very important for us to make a point, because it's definitely because of the Panama Canal and because of the possibility of a Panama Canal happening before it even was built that Panama has such a relevance. We already know that because of the Pan-American route within all of the American continent, Panama is definitely a place to go through, and is very thin, very small within the continent. However, it's not only that, but the fact that Panama has two important oceans within it, which are the Atlantic and the Pacific. The Atlantic and the Pacific. Now, the Panama Canal definitely has very important users, which include the US, China, Korea, Japan, and many others. But its relevance became more important once the Panama Canal was built. And then relevant dates about Panama that we might get into if we eventually start talking a bit more about our countries would be 1903, which is the year in which Panama was birthed as a country, which came out as a state to the world. 1977, which is the year in which the Security Council of the United Nations allowed Panama to have a moment to write and sign important treaties to get back the Panama Canal zone, and with it to get the Panama Canal, which was built by the US government and administrated by it until 1999. However, 1989 is also an important year because there was the US invasion in Panamanian territory to retrieve the authoritarian that was in that moment, Manuel Antonio Noriega, and 1999, the year being the retrieval of the Panama Canal zone to Panama's hands. But today is as much important as the other dates, because it is today and forward that we're going to be of use of the world, and that we're going to be able to enlarge our international cooperation, our diplomatic relationships with other countries, with other regions, and as you might know, the whole world. Because in a globalized world, what is Panama if not just one of the many branches of the world? Now, if we see Panama today, a new role, a new government, as I want to focus on within these parts, we had presidential elections. They were May 5th, and our new elected president is President Jose Raul Mulino. He will be the manager of Panama's foreign affairs in the period 2024 to 2029, because Panama's international affairs are mostly directed and distributed and thought of by the President of the Republic. And definitely, Panama is the new Latin American and the Caribbean member of the UN Security Council starting on January 2026. And it's important to know and understand what are the possibilities of Panama within this council. Is Panama going to be able to portray our voices, the voices of a whole nation that was built with the strength of many, help of others, and then eventually the attach of that help to finally understand their own sovereignty? We will see that throughout the years, and as Panamanians and you as one of the countries that is going to be looking out for Panama and seeing what we're going to do, we must remain critical of everything that is happening and understand our politicians once they start doing their work, which is going to be up to July 1st for the first day. That is cambio de mando. We're going to transition into the new government. I don't have any more to say for the presentation. I would really like to have the discussion. So I thank you for giving me these moments. So I would really like to know if the Polish students have anything to tell us. It's not only me, we have other students here who are able to also talk to you and have this conversation going on. So yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that I will try to moderate our discussion. And well, first of all, I will ask if somebody has a question. I mean, it's the best time to show up that you have a question. And I think that there is possibility to write the question down on the chat if you don't have a microphone or you are just shy or something like this. And I think that questions can be both in Polish, Spanish, English, and so on. And we'll translate them because it's not the problem. Okay, and do we have chat here? Okay, and or maybe somebody wants just to ask a question right now because this is still an option.
Well, I want to ask a question. I can't open my camera. I don't have it right now. But specifically for the Polish students, I wanted to know when you were here and during the presentation of Andrea, we have a very specific way of demographic development in Panama because of the main roads from the Pan American Highway through Transísnica. It's a very, it's not traditional the way that Panamanian urbanization and history developed because of the division that the United States being here caused. I wanted to know how the main road systems and railroads in Poland affected the development of international affairs for you in commerce and demographic movement.
Okay, so somebody from our team or from Poland want to answer this question, or should I do it? I can't see anyone actually. Okay, so I think that I will answer to this question. I mean, to us it's really important because, well, for example, there are so many people who, for example, were born in some city, let's say at the south of Poland, the north of Poland, and then they are moving into a bigger city, for example, to go to university or something like this. And actually I think that a numerous number of students, for example, we are using train to travel from our let's say cities, our family cities, to university cities. And I know that there are so many people who, for example, live in some, let's say, some small city, and they, for 2 or 3 days every single week, they use a train to travel to a bigger city, and they work there, for example, in some kind of office or something like this. So in our daily life, yes, we see the trains, and they are really important to us. And additionally, when it comes to the commerce, for example, or to economy, is important because we can travel goods from one border to another. But there is another problem because, well, in general, in whole Europe, you have the same size of. Could you help me, my Polish friends? How are szyny in English? Because I have
Tracks.
forgot.
Railway
Tracks.
tracks.
Yeah, I mean the size of tracks are, for example, different in Ukraine, in Belarus, and in Russia, and they are different in the, let's say, rest of the Europe. And we need some kind of special stations in which they need to reload the goods and things like this. So yeah, it's not so easy, but it's really important because we use railways as an option to transfer goods from one border to another, for instance. So yeah, it's really important to us. And maybe you want to add something, Janek?
In terms
I
of railways and public transport and the transportation routes in Poland, it's important to highlight that something that's very important about Poland historically was that there was also differences between each division of Poland before 1918, because Poland was divided into three parts by Russia, Germany, and Austria-Hungary. But it's also important that railways, for example, were developed in order to transit, for example, goods from, for example, areas with high concentration of industry, like, for example, Silesia, where Dorota is from. Yes, there's railways from Silesia to the seaside, and Poland's commerce developed highly because of the presence of, for example, seaports, which were developed, for example, in the interwar period and in the period of socialist Poland, the Polish People's Republic, because Poland also regained territories in the current west of Poland, which were previously German. But in terms of public transport, it also affects Poland in the way that, for example, public transport was more developed during the times of Polish People's Republic. And also there was a lesser emphasis on individual transport, like cars. Many people just couldn't afford them. And a lot of that, some of the public transport was reduced after the fall of socialism. Individual transport, like cars, were more developed, and there was a higher emphasis on that. And for example, some people technically have it easier to move around and transport things thanks to the development of, like, let's say, trucks and cars and things like that. Some people have lesser access to, let's say, transportation and lesser access to that. It has changed in many ways, but Poland, generally speaking, also had another important thing, which was the fact that we have big rivers. For example, the river Vistula, which goes through Kraków, and Wisła, and finishes in the tree city of Gdańsk, Gdynia, Sopot. Not all of them were part of Poland, but they are all Polish cities after World War II. And something that has also influenced Poland highly was the presence of big rivers. For example, the western border of Poland is also near a river, so we have many aspects like that. But generally, it's a different case compared to Panama, for example, in terms of trains, because Poland doesn't have such a difficult natural areas, like, for example, well, I know the Darien jungle, which is very inaccessible, right? Here in Poland, it's flatlands, nice and easy.
Yeah, and maybe I will add only that, especially right now, traveling by train is perceived as something, I will even say cool, because it's a green way of transportation. And additionally, in Poland, I think it's really, maybe not really cheap, but in consideration with other meaning of transport, is, let's say, reachable, especially when you not travel with the most expensive modern Pendolino trains, because where they are super modern and look a little bit like Shinkansens in Japan, let's say. But if you travel with, let's say, with normal train, like train, it's cheap, because for example, journey from Warsaw to Gdańsk, I think that if you had student ID card, it costs like 20 zloty, so it's like $5, If I am I right? Because Basia, you are from the north part of Poland, so
I mean,
well,
the cheapest ticket I think right now it's about 35 zlotys, so a bit more, but it's still affordable. It's really affordable.
yeah. Yeah, so still it's I think it's a really well comfortable and cheap way of transportation here in Poland. And as I mentioned, that for us it was a surprise that in Panama there are actually no railways at all. So yeah, for us it was a surprise.
Yeah, that's very interesting. When you showed the map of the main roads in Poland, those were interesting. Panama has a similar um distribution of our main roads, but they're mainly located in the capital, so that completely alienates the rest of the whole country. It doesn't even reach other provinces further than the capital. So it's very interesting to see that. And the fact that it's so widespread to use public transportation like that, like trains and stuff in Poland and in Europe as a whole is very interesting to me. And especially the part about how easy it is to transport merchandise and commerce through the borders, because as far as I know, most of that region of Europe is pretty much flatlands. So that's also something that greatly benefits you. I didn't know about the rivers, and that's also very cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. And actually, if this topic is interesting to you, I mean the whole group, I think that we can, well, during one meeting, let's say, deepen this topic and talk a little bit more about transportation in Poland, if it's interesting to you, because, well, this is why we are here. Okay, I can see the Janek approves, so yeah, okay. I think that we can prepare something like this, and I will take a note that we should prepare something like this for another meeting. So maybe now a question from our Polish side to you. And first of all, I will ask if somebody on the audience has a question, because, well, you are also invited to take part in our discussion. I mean, if you want to answer a question or ask a question, feel free. I mean, it's for us. So maybe somebody from Poland has a question to our friends from Panama. I can't see any question right now. Maybe somebody. If not, actually, I have a question to you, because I still keep in mind this fact that, well, when we were talking about your identity, that Panama is not like the Central America and things like this, that you are more like Caribbean country and things like this. I want to ask, how do you feel? I mean, how the students feel this topic? Because I think that maybe your point of view is different than point of view of academics, or let's say adults. So how do you see it?
Well, I'm going to answer this part myself, but I'm going to also ask my classmates too if they feel like answer too. However, I think that the idiosyncrasy of Panama is we are Panamanian. That's it. It's developed into the separation of thought of older people with new generation. We don't care much about parlacen as other generations may do. We don't believe Panama should be in parlacen, and we think it doesn't help us at all. Up to the point that we don't really see a resemblance of Central America and Panama. Like, we don't see Panama as part of Central America. We see Panama as a backbone of Central America, but not really part of it. Kind of like a spine that they can just like see each other with, but we don't see that way. If I talk personally about my opinion on it, I also don't see a benefit of Panama being part of Parlacen. But I don't believe we are the leaders of anything. I just believe we don't really mix with each other. Our political views sometimes differ, sometimes are in tune. However, there is not really that like sense of belonging that maybe in other parts of the world, some countries may or may not feel towards a specific region. Panama, culturally, mostly, we also don't think we're Caribbean, but we understand somehow that socially we understand each other better, up to the point that if you think a bit about the different social groups within the coasts of Panama, mostly in the north, those are the ones that are attached to the Atlantic, the Caribbean. Sorry, I think okay, yeah. So the Caribbean. Therefore, you could say that socially and culturally, we're mostly Caribbean. We definitely have a detachment of the South after the separation of Panama from Colombia, as the Project Colombia was, because as you who came to Panama may know, maybe not the other students know, Panama is not part of Colombia. It was never part of Colombia. It was part of the Project Colombia, not the country, just the project. And because of that, we don't have an attachment to the South either. So although some people may still feel an affiliation to Central America, it's definitely socially and culturally more understood that we are the continental part of the Caribbean, mostly. If one of my classmates has another point of view or wants to add to the idea, please do so. I think it is widely spread mostly that way. But I see you have your mic open, so please do talk.
Yeah. I wanted to add to what you said. For the students that don't know, that didn't come to Panama, the cultural history of Panama is very rich and very interesting, because starting from the development of the canal, Panama had a great influx of many Caribbean workers and workers that came from India, Asia in general, mainly Chinese. That those populations greatly influenced the way that the urban centers of the time developed. In Panama, we have very much sections of cultural relevance of different ethnic groups and cultures. For example, in the Colon coast, which is in the Caribbean Sea, we have a greater influence of Caribbean culture. People from the Antillas, how do you say that?
We just say Antilles, Antillas.
Well, that from Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, Jamaica, people from those countries. They settled mostly in that area, or the other coast of Panama, which also developed just a little differently than that one. I specifically mentioned Colon because that's where the main port of the country for most of our history has been located. The other main port is at the other end of the Panama Canal, which is the Balboa port in the Pacific Ocean, and right in the capital. So that's another way that culturally it has molded our country. We can also see because of the American presence right in the middle of the country, there has been a historic alienation of both sides. For example, the main, how do you say it, provincias centrales, central provinces, they developed mostly in ways more similar to the rest of Central America, even though the culture is not precisely close. It's just the type of development. For example, agriculture, the main types of commerce, they were much influenced by countries like Costa Rica, Nicaragua, which a lot of migrants from those countries came to settle in Panama because of the new economic opportunities. And then we have areas like the province of Chiriquí, which is right in the border with Costa Rica, where a lot of European migrants settled. So there, the culture is very much, it has a notable difference from the rest of the country. most of the lighter-skinned people in Panama are usually descendants of people that settled in Chiriquí. So that's also a way that it developed here. Later on in our history, when the United States finally left the country and gave us back our lands around the canal, that's when the commerce and real interchange between both sides of the country really started happening. And now we have now most of the development demographically and economically is happening mainly in the province of Panama, but it's starting to also move on to West Panama, which is on the other side of the canal. It's a new province that is getting a lot of demographic growth, and a lot of people are starting to try to start moving the economy there. So it's a very interesting moment right now in Panamanian history and economics because of the great development that we've had because of that freedom of transit, and now we don't have to pay taxes inside our own country to get from one side of the canal to the other. So that's also very interesting.
Thank you, Amber. Therefore, Panama doesn't have an attachment to the rest of the countries because we have so many types of people within the country that it's really hard to match the idiosyncrasy with the rest of the regions next to it.
Yeah, and besides that, I forgot to mention the fact that we have the Daring Gap. It basically made it impossible for Colombian culture and government to really establish in Panama when we were part of the Great Colombia. So that's why we never really became part of Colombia. We were very much a very distant idea in the central Colombian government at the time. That's why it was much easier for Panama to just separate itself from them.
Okay, and if I may a bit continue with this topic, because you mentioned that on one hand, you are detached from Central America, and we could see it while we were there. Everyone was talking about it, only mentioning, well, Panama as a Central American country already got so many responses that we avoided right now. But I have a question about migration, because we can see a huge migration right now to Panama from other exactly Central American countries. We have talked with so many people from Nicaragua, from Honduras, from even Guatemala and further north, right? And I want to ask whether do you have any idea how they feel? Do they feel as they are in the part of their region? Do they perceive Panama as a part of their universe of Central America? Do they feel like they are quite at home, right? With Panama being so close to them regionally and geographically, or do they feel like they have traveled to this different sphere, right? Different, as you called it, different continent.
Well, most definitely, if they food-wise feel at home. Food-wise, we share a lot of the Central American cuisine, but definitely they do feel like they travel to a different region of the Americas. It's not if they move from Guatemala to Nicaragua, they might feel a bit more at home somehow. They might feel a bit more the similar, maybe somehow politics, somehow society, all of these. But as soon as people travel to Panama, maybe because of the amount of people from other regions of the world, it feels different. I personally talk a lot to people from El Salvador, from Guatemala, and Nicaragua. And these part of Central America, they definitely sense a difference. The infrastructure is different. The traditional infrastructure isn't, but the modern infrastructure is. Panama is known for having a lot of tall buildings, which is not something common in the rest of Central America, although there might be definitely tall buildings. It's not as much as you go to the Panama City and you can see that everywhere you walk, you only see buildings. And as that's also one of the reasons they're calling us Dubai of Central America or Miami of Latin America. And we would love it to be mostly because of the economic growth, but we know it's because of the buildings. Sorry if you hear something behind me. So if you talk to people from Central America, they will tell you that most definitely there is a detachment of it, but they kind of wish Panama was more similar to Central America, at least society-wise, because I do know that we come off to South Americans as a bit more tough to talk to as the rest of Latin Americans. Might have to do with the fact that we have so many people from so many different countries. There's a lot of Chinese culture situation happening around since 150, 160 years ago. We had the American people here for quite a long time, from 1904 until 1999. And although they left as part of the administrators of the Panama Canal, we have diplomatic relationship with the US that's very close enough for Americans to always be here. So our society develops different from the rest of Central America, so they also notice the difference of it. Is there any other question around that may need like?
I wanted to add to that.
Yeah, go ahead,
The fact that most of Central America shares the same independent state. Panama doesn't. We have a completely different independent state because politically, since the Spanish colonization of the Americas, Central America and Panama belong to different administrations. So that also
we call them virreinatos. In Spanish, it would be virreinatos. We were different virreinatos. Go ahead, Amber, sorry.
How would you call that in English? I have never actually seen virreinatos translated.
Me neither. Usually virreinatos is translated mostly as just small provinces or small regions assigned to the king.
Okay, that thing. But yeah, they from Mexico all the way down to Costa Rica, they share the same independence date from Spain. So that also creates a sort of division because they celebrate Central American Independence Day mainly, but Panama has a completely different one, and we have multiple because from the times of colonization and then the union to the Great Colombia, we have had a politically very different history. So that's also a fact to take into account. Besides that, what Andrea said about a certain closeness to United States, a lot of Panamanian society and mostly older people that grew up during the times when the United States was here in the Canal Zone, a lot of people identify more closely to American culture and cultural behaviors than to that of Central America or South America even. So that's also something to take into account. That's influenced the way Panamanian outlook on development has developed. To us, development looks like the United States, not like Medellin. It's a very interesting thing to consider when we talk about the reasons why Panama is seen as an outsider by both Central America and South America. So I hope that also answered your question. I saw in the chat someone also asked a question.
Yes, I think I just want to add a really short comment before we switch the topics, because I may be mistaken, but it is my intuition that we have a bit of a similarity here between Poland and Panama, actually, because you really do not want to be perceived as Central American for a list of very good reasons that you have given us right now. And we in Poland really do not wish, in our general Polish mind, to be perceived as part of an Eastern Europe. And we also have a list of reasons. We also geographically could be considered Eastern Europe if we divide Europe only to East and West, right? We forget about like Central or something, because as Dorota mentioned, there are no geographical like landmarks. We do not want to be perceived as Eastern Europe. I see a bit of a connection here, but that's just a short comment.
And I think that Mr. Janek would like to comment on just on this, yeah?
I would also like to make one comment concerning the identification of Poles as Central European people. In a sense, there is a logic behind that, because one reason is that Eastern Europe could be identified with, for example, Eastern Orthodox religion, which is a very strong part of the Russian identity and the Belarusian identity and the Ukrainian identity. There is, for example, a difference between Poles and Ukrainians in that they're Eastern Orthodox. Poles are Roman Catholics. Roman Catholicism and Catholicism in general has been a huge part of the Polish identity, even if you're not a Catholic, like for example, I am not. But I see that a big part of there's also a cultural legacy of Catholicism in Poland, and there's a big difference because there's the neighbors of Poland to the south, Czech Republic, Slovakia, also Hungary, between which we have a strong connection, are also Catholic countries. And this is an important element of the Central European identity, I believe. Another aspect is also the fact that, for example, Ukrainian, Belarus, and the pre-Baltic states, Pre-Baltica, as the Russians call it, yes, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, were formerly part of the Soviet Union, right? Poland was part of the Eastern Bloc, but was obviously not part of the Soviet Union. And I think this also cements, for example, strongly the identity as Polish identity as Central European religion, for example. Also, even the fact that we use a different alphabet compared to the Russians, the Ukrainians, and the Belarusians. This is very important, I think, and that's also something we should not miss, because in Latin America, in general, pretty much, every country is Catholic. There's obviously some countries with more Protestants, some countries with less Protestants, right? And there's the issue of increase in Protestants in many of those countries. But this is more of a Claudia's topic, and she knows much more about that. So it's up to her to develop that. But I also think that this religious identity is very important, because Poland's Catholicism goes back way to the 10th century. Obviously, there's a lot of myths around that, but this is very strong, important.
The religion will be the topic of one of our next.
And we had a Pope, Jan Paweł II, very important person in Polish history. Anecdotally, sometimes Panamanians, for example, would recognize us recognize our country because there was a Pope, Juan Pablo II, yeah, was from Poland. That's also important thing that makes us recognizable around the world. The capital.
Yeah, but I think that we'll talk about it during another meeting. And for today, not to prolong it too much, we still have, I can see one question on the chat. Another question is not, let's say, ended, it's still under construction. So I will read the question from one of our Polish friends. So what is the Panama's perspective on Latin America integration? Is this idea popular among people, or is Panama distancing itself from it? Should be integration of Latin America be continued, or the current level of integration is enough? So
we actually have we are in our 4th year of university, and there is one of the courses called integration. It's actually about integration. It is about this type of integration, and whenever we talk about it, it's always first the question is there actually a Latin American integration? We know there are several attempts to it in the South, few attempts to it in the central part of America. Mexico is here and there. We can see it usually, OEA, Organización de Estados Americanos, in which the United States also is part, and some countries of the South don't like them being there. But if we focus on Panama, as I already mentioned, for the Central American parts, there is not really that much of an advantage to keep on an integration with Central America in Panama's eyes, mostly society. However, our governments have constantly mentioned the need of a Latin American, maybe not union, but somewhat integration, not necessarily in politics. I see your hand raised, Isabella. Now I'm gonna give you the words. However, since we have different currencies, the whole part of Latin America has that characteristic of not having the same currency within their countries. We would need to be all dollarized to be able to have a full integration or economic integration, which is already hard in my eyes. And maybe in my perspective, we don't see that happening like here to 5 years or maybe up to 10 years. It's going to have a lot of time until that happens, if it were to happen. However, I will give the word to Isabel because she really does love economic topics. So I'm gonna give it to her. Go, Isabel.
Hi everyone. I don't know if you can hear me. Yes. Okay.
Yes,
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. The thing with integration in Latin America that I think it might be difficult for you guys because you come from the European continent is that it's not that beneficial for us, honestly, because of how unstable our countries are. I know it's sad to hear that, and I know it's like quite because we are all brothers and sisters and cousins, but it's more like a cultural thing. In our countries, we have way too many problems, internal problems, that we don't really know how to solve by themselves. So because of the way our politics are made and the way how we see integration and how we see other countries in Latin America, we don't see integration like with other countries that beneficial. That doesn't mean that we don't have integration. We do have integration, but it always come off more as a help for other countries than something beneficial for us, because we are pretty attached to our near countries. We have pretty good relations with all the countries in Latin America. Panama is really good in that part of having good diplomatic relationships and commercial relationships. But seeing as a like international affairs students and seeing more as what we should think as Panamanian is not that beneficial for us. But we do have it, but it's more, it always come off more as a help for others. We can see that on migration. I don't know if you guys noticed, but all the news about now our president, Jose Raul Mulino, he always point out his point of view about migrantes, migrants on the Darien, and the international news all point that out. That's how much I think that shows how much other countries in the region depends on us and the help that we give on that part. Because I mean, President Mulino, when he was a ministry of security.
Yeah, the Ministry of Security, that's right.
He made a lot of things that it might be worse than what he wants to do with migrants, but because of the part that we have, the role that we have on migration in the region, all the international news point that out. I don't know if my answer responds like correctly for what was asking the person. No sé, Hannah.
Yeah, well, we don't know if the way that we are answering helps you
No sé
understand
si mi respuesta le... Okay.
She said yes. Great.
Yeah, okay. And I'm wondering because I think that we don't want to prolong this meeting, like, I don't know, for much time. So maybe I have a favor to the Aldona who want to ask about transport. Maybe you will just, memorize your question and we will get back to it during meeting about transport, because I can see that this topic is actually really interesting. So I think that if we don't have any, let's say, quick questions, because as I said, I do not want to prolong this meeting. Actually, I can't see. So I have a plan that maybe on our WhatsApp group we'll think about some other topic which we want to talk about it during next meeting. Actually, we have holidays in July, August, and so on. But I think that we will do this meeting because, well, it's online and we really like this formula. So I think that maybe we can end here. And Dr. Bolek, could you please stop recording to make sure that that it's